voting. Basically, the way it works with that is somebody will speak the motion, give the opportunity to speak against it. If they want to. Can anybody who's not muted mind muting themselves, please? I think there's a bit of feedback. Thank you. And then once we've done all of the debating and everything, then we move on to any other business if anyone has anything else they want to raise, and then I'll just notify you of when voting is. One quick thing before we move on to questions to officers. I just want you guys to remember to conduct yourselves properly in this meeting. Obviously, this is an area for debate. We're not all going to agree on everything, but if you could just keep it polite and respectful and only speak when I call on you to do so, otherwise it just gets a bit kind of hectic. And I want to make sure that everybody who wants to speak has the chance to. So I think that's everything. And if I can move on to the section. So this is basically questions to officers. If anybody has got the opportunity to do so, to ask anything, then please feel free. Also, just we are recording this meeting, so please don't say anything that you wouldn't want to be recorded. With that being said, everybody who's got a question, would you like to put your hand up, and I will let you speak. Are there any hands, Yaz?
I am looking. I don't see any hands up for officers.
Okay.
I'll give it another minute, if that's okay.
Yeah, that's fine.
It might be worth clarifying as well, Lucy, because there's been a couple of messages on the chat about what this meeting is compared to what ASV is. So some people think they can vote here. So it might be good just to clarify that.
So this meeting, there's no actual voting that goes on at the ASV. This is literally just your opportunity to debate the motions that will be going to the all-student vote this week. And essentially, you've got, I think it's 3 days from tomorrow morning until Friday to vote on these meetings online, on these motions rather. I think any student has the opportunity to vote. The link will be on the SU website. It should be fairly obvious once you log on to it. So yeah, no actual voting here, but if you want to say your bit on a motion, if you've got a particular opinion that you want to get across, then this is your opportunity to do that. Have we had any hands or not?
Nah, no hands. You can move on.
Cool. Someone trying to share something with me? A bit confused. Right, okay, with that, let's move on to our first motion, which, if I move this down, is motion 6.1, boycott, divestment and sanctions motion, or BDS, divest and break the links and pledge to be apartheid free. So we should, I think Hamza is here to speak in favour of this motion. So Hamza, would you like to go ahead?
Cool, thank you. Can anyone hear me, by the way?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Cool. So under the definitions dating back to the 1970s, of which there is a broad international consensus, the evidence that the state of Israel has engaged in apartheid, i.e. institutional racial separation on matters such as access to land, housing, education, water, transportation, healthcare, development funds and others is simply overwhelming. In addition, its occupation of Palestinian territories since 1967 has been characterized by various crimes under international law, primarily but not limited to the transfer of citizens from one country to another, to change facts on the ground, detention without trial, and crucially for this motion, indiscriminate bombing of civilians and illegal home demolitions. This is nowhere more manifest than the largest home demolitions in over a decade last week in Kirba, Humsa, which left 81 people, including 41 children, homeless. As mentioned in the motion, University of Warwick are working with companies that are complicit in the ongoing oppression of Palestinians. Warwick Manufacturing Group have contracts with Bay AE Systems and JCB, both of which are supplying the necessary equipment to lay siege on occupied territories, as well as to demolish Palestinian homes in hope to bring in settlers. It is abhorrent that our university is supporting the ongoing occupation of Palestine by working with complicit companies that have been supplying Israel tools to support their illegal annexation programs. Just a few decades ago, students, activists, and students' unions across the UK stood up against the South Africa apartheid and actively pressured and campaigned against universities and forced them to divest from companies that supported the apartheid regime. Now it is time we do the same against Israel. We must stand as a collective with other unions, including NUS, who have adopted a BDS policy, stand in solidarity with Palestinians, and demand that our university divest from all institutions and corporations that are complicit in Israeli apartheid regime. If we are to stay true to anti-racist practice, if we are to stay rooted in our anti-colonial resistance, and if we are to demand our universities to decolonize and to divest from complicit companies and institutions, just like how our older activists did against South Africa apartheid, then support this motion and demand that the university pledges to be apartheid-free.
Thank you, Hamza. I forgot to say before we started the motion debates, I'm going to limit people's individual speaking times to 2 minutes per thing, just because obviously we've got a lot to get through. But yeah, cool, thank you. Does anybody want to speak against this motion before I open up the floor to debate? Please raise your hand.
I've got 2 hands. I don't know who you want to go first. I think there was one hand now. So the first one I think was Conrad.
Okay, Conrad, do you want to go first? Hello?
So sorry, Conrad, I think I've sent you a request to unmute yourself.
Sorry about that, but it is my first time using the app.
That's fine, no worries.
Just like to start by pointing out that the student union don't have any other foreign policy positions. Why is this issue the issue we should suddenly decide to have a foreign policy position on? We're a student union. We're not we can't meaningfully affect foreign policy. Also, I point out that this is a bit of a money wasting initiative. The university have to spend time and money finding alternative resources and replacing the the large number of Hewlett-Packard products made in Israel. Money which could and would probably be better spent on the mental health and welfare of students. And finally, I'd just like to point out that it would essentially prevent both the Friday night dinners for Warwick's Jewish community and ban Israeli speakers from campus. The first one because most kosher products can only be bought from Israeli companies in bulk, so having the dinners would become much harder. I think these are all legitimate points against the motion, which, in conclusion, I feel is a gesture with no impact beyond making ourselves in the student union feel goods and tangible negative results.
Ask anybody who's not muted to please mute yourself, otherwise I get feedback and I can't hear proper things. There's a user in the bottom here who isn't muted. So if you could do that, please. Who was the other hand that I had?
I think you've had a hand up. Yeah, I'm just going to request to unmute you so you can go as soon as you see that request.
Okay.
Hello.
Yes, yeah.
Well, I am also stating the view of to oppose this motion because the Israeli-Palestinian conflict is obviously has a lot of rational and everything, and the state solution, the only solution to the Israel-Palestine conflict, and BDS is it divides the campaign, which pushes this reality of 2 states for 2 people further away. It dampens progressive voices and exacerbates the politics of fear and sorry, I have a stammer, of fear, and animosity which extreme politicians on both sides thereof. We should be supporting those in Israel who want to foster the conditions for peace, but with BDS policy we cannot. If we really push positive change in Israel and Palestine, it should support campaigns which bring people closer together, not further apart. That's just all I want to say. I just want to say that BDS is a one-sided motion which kind of makes more on campus, and is that really what we want to be doing right now, especially in the time that we're in? That's all I want to say.
Thank you. Did anybody want to? I'm going to open up the floor to debate now. So literally anybody that's got anything, if Hamza wanted to come back to that, for example, or if anybody else has anything to say, then please raise your hand.
Just quickly as well, just because we're getting feedback loop, I'm gonna mute everyone for the time being.
Yeah, that's fine.
And then once you do want to raise your hand, or if you have a question on the chat, we'll read it out that way. Okay. So I'm just gonna mute you all now. Lucy, you'll be muted as well.
I would also say just to kind of be brief with your statements because there's a lot to go through tonight.
Yeah.
I think I've muted everyone. So what I'm going to do is, I think there's a couple of chat questions that I'm going to refer back to, and then I think open it up. Then after, it's up to you. So the first one from Shoshana: how would this boycott affect the university directly? What would we be boycotting? The next question is: how would this motion benefit the student experience at the university? And then, to what extent is WMG actually responsible for anything that's happening?
Are these questions aimed at Hamza?
I'm assuming so. I feel like the first two are. I don't know about the third one. Yuval, your hand is still up. Is that if you want to lower your hand? Okay, cool. It's been lowered. Yeah, there hasn't been any further hands up loose.
Okay. I'm just going to unshare my second because I'm aware that my Google Chrome notifications are going through. Give me 1 second.
It's all right. Not very exciting, love.
Sorry, I think I've.
Yeah, you're back.
Cool. Right. Okay. Sorry about that. Has anybody else got any questions? If not, or like anything else they want to add to the debate? If not, then we can move on.
I don't see any further hands up, I'm afraid.
All right. In that case,
I'm frozen. I don't know if you can hear me, but I've been struggling with my internet.
Okay, no, I can. Yeah, I can hear you. If you want to come back on any of those points, go ahead.
There's quite a few questions. I don't know which one I should answer first. But I guess I'll start with the ones on the chat. The first one I can see is how would this boycott affect the university directly? What would we be boycotting? I mean, it's in the motion. If you have read it, we will be. I mean, the motion proposes that the university ends all ties with complicit companies and institutions that are currently oppressing Palestinian people. And that is what we are boycotting or calling for a boycott of, not exactly Israeli institutions or companies, but British companies in particular, like JCB, for instance, and BAE Systems. That is what we are currently calling for the university to boycott from these complicit companies. I'm going through the chat. There's quite a few questions. To what extent is WMG actually responsible for anything that's happening? To answer your question, so Warwick Manufacturing Group currently have ties with BAE Systems, and those systems are used for to create fighter jets that have been used in the siege in Gaza in 2014. And this is an issue in itself, because not only is the siege illegal according to international law, but it's also oppressing Palestinian people and murdering Palestinians in general. And that is how the Warwick Manufacturing Group are complicit in what is happening in Palestine. I don't know why I'm going through the chat, but like there's quite a few questions. Can someone help me out with this?
Yeah, I'm happy to speak.
Yeah, go.
Oh yeah, so could I, let me just look at the chat. Sorry, just for a second. Yeah, I'd say in general, there's a kind of underlying question. One of them is, why are we doing this? So one of them is that I think it's important for us to take stands on issues like these. And why is this within the jurisdiction or interest of the SU? Well, it's because the point of the SU, as far as I understand it as a member of the SU, is to hold the university into account. So if people read the motion, they'll see that the first point refers to the university's own pledges to reduce and ideally eliminate corporate behavior that leads to armament sales to military regimes and human rights violations. Yet they continue to work with corporations that support and aid Israel's settler colonial regime. So regardless of people's specific stances on the conflict between Israel and Palestine, there isn't really much of a question that human rights violations do occur there. So it's not that we're introducing our own set of principles necessarily. We're trying to hold the university to account. And I think that if people cannot see that, then they have a very narrow and limited understanding of what this SU should be doing. And yeah, I mean, and also the point about oh, shouldn't money better be spent on mental health? We should spend money on mental health. There should be work put into mental health, and we should also try and stop this kind of activity, because at the end of the day, if we say that we want more mental health resources because it is better for people, human beings, then surely we should also want to prevent activities that are conducted essentially in our name by this university that harm other human beings. People in Palestine and people at POT are both human beings, and they both have a right to live. So therefore, I think we should respect that right and support this motion. I yield.
Thank you. Was that all of the questions that you wanted to respond to, Hamza?
Yeah, I think so. Let me just double check. Give me a second. One question is it not anti-Semitic to single out the Jewish state when most countries have committed very worse crimes? Well, let me just kind of like talk about BDS and why BDS is essentially not anti-Semitic. So BDS in itself targets the Israeli state because of its serious violations of international law and human rights. It does not target organizations simply because they are Israeli and has no bearing on whether they are Jewish. In fact, Israel's claim to carry out its brutal policies in the name of all Jewish people have been refuted by many Jewish groups and individuals who also oppose the action of the state. So in July 2018, 40 Jewish groups from 15 countries signed a letter coming out against equating BDS with anti-Semitism. The BDS movement is in fact an anti-racist initiative started by Palestinian civil society, modeling itself on the anti-apartheid movement that helped to bring liberation for Black South Africans. It is rooted in an internationalist call to stand in solidarity with the Palestinian people who are dispossessed, living under brutal Israeli occupation, and have been denied human rights, and self-determination. To suggest that a call from 170 Palestinian civil society groups for support as part of a non-violent movement is racist and anti-Semitic is not only incorrect, but it also insults to millions of Palestinians who support this movement and are fighting for their freedom.
Thank you, Hamza. Just a reminder, guys, can we keep it to only questions in the chat, please? I don't want.
Lucy, sorry, I've lost contact with you on alternative rooms. I'm gonna have to mute everyone again just because of feedback loop. I'm also really sorry, but because the chat's operating quicker to the way that the debate's happening, I think I'm gonna have to remove the chat function just for the time being, if that's okay with you.
Yeah, that's fine.
And in terms of questions, if people do want to raise them, then they can put their hands up, and then they can privately email or message as well if needs be. So I'm just gonna give me 1 second while I do that. Bear with me. So I think the chat function's gone now. We can go back to, I think, hand up if that's okay. So there's a couple of hands up left. I just want to again put everybody on mute. We've got a couple of hands up. I think Maverick had already spoken. I think Nazif is there. Then it's Conrad and Zach and Yuval.
Okay. You have to go first, please.
Sorry, was that me?
Yeah.
Okay. I just saw something in the chat which was like, oh, what about China? I just wanted to raise the point, like Hamza said, Palestinians have been calling for BDS for years now. Uyghurs in China have not. So what we're not going to do is pit Muslims against Jewish people and cause further divide. Yeah, that's all I wanted to say.
Thank you. Who was next, Yaz?
I think it was Conrad after.
Okay, Conrad.
Yeah, I'd not sure what is technically how thing works, but I'd just like to boost someone's statement I saw in chats, which is the founder of the BDS leadership has the leadership of the organization BDS has a history of dodgy remarks, supporting acts of terrorism, and claiming that Israel funded the Taliban. Yeah, that's about what I wanted to say.
Okay, who was next?
After Conrad, I think it was Zach.
Okay, Zach.
Right. Good afternoon, everyone. I hope you can all hear me. Yeah, just a few points in general to the discussion that's been going on. On the question of the university, someone made the point of university picking foreign policy and whether the university is supposed to have that. Well, the university has an ethical investment policy, and through its decisions or lack of a decision, even a lack of decision is in itself a decision. And if we are to, for example, look at the attitude of the British government in terms of financial sanctions and international arms embargoes, the British government already has them on over 20 countries, including countries in the region of the Middle East, such as Iran, Iraq, Lebanon, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, and Syria. So really, the real hypocrisy would be not to hold the government of the State of Israel, which often commits far worse violations than the governments of the previously mentioned countries, to the same standard. I think it's also important to really keep in mind that apartheid, as we're talking about it, when we describe the State of Israel as one that practices apartheid, we're not just talking about some sort of willy-nilly buzzwords a bunch of university student activists came up in their accommodation to sound bombastic. The term itself has been used as legal terminology since the adoption of the Convention on the Suppression of Punishment of the Crime of Apartheid by the UN General Assembly Resolution 1973, and there's been further There's been further terminology describing, it's been used in further terminology described by the 1977 Protocol additional to the Geneva Conventions. The 1998 Rome Statute of the International Criminal Court includes the crime of apartheid as in a list of crimes against humanity. And the point is not to claim that there are no differences in the conditions and ways that apartheid manifests itself in South Africa and manifests itself today in the state of Israel. But the evidence that it does exist in the latter is simply damning, and it's evidenced by a multitude of evidence that we simply, it would take too long to get into here. As for one example is the 2012 review by the UN Committee on the Elimination of Racial Discrimination. And also, I would also like to make the point that this motion doesn't debate the question of the existence of the state of Israel. It doesn't talk about Israeli companies. It doesn't talk about any of that. We really need to stick to the point. And the point is, there are companies that this university is helping finance, at least to some extent, or through memoranda of understanding, that are complicit in, frankly, abhorrent acts. And if the university tries to keep itself as an ethical institution, then it should really keep these in mind when designing its policy. And we, as the SU, are the ones that are the voice of the students in directing that. Thank you.
Thank you. Yaz, did we have any other hands, or was that?
Yeah, we've got quite a few. However, I know we're pressing for time, so I think Yuval was the last one. And then after, if you want to go to summating speeches after that, I think that'd be good.
Yeah, okay. Just because, as Yaz said, we're tight on time, I'm just going to allow for Hamza to do one last kind of speech in favour, and then we'll move on to our second motion.
Essentially, what this motion is standing for is holding the university account and to end ties with complicit companies that are oppressing Palestinians. This has happened, of course, during South Africa as well, and Students' Union and students in general were politicized and supported the boycott of South Africa. Now, like I said in my opening statement, it is time that we do the same, but for Palestinians. So please support this motion and start voting by tomorrow, I believe, at 9.
Can I speak?
Very quickly, we just need to move on.
I was meant to be the next person to talk. I just want to say something really quick. This is initially to do with, because BDS is specifically BDS is like specifically a movement to do with boycotting Israel. It is not a peaceful movement. The BDS campaign and a hostile delegitimization tactic. They have nothing to do to promote peace. And as Conrad was saying before, how there are some stuff that have been said, quotes have been said, we oppose a Jewish state in any part of Palestine. A sellout Palestinian would accept a Jewish state in Palestine. The real aim of BDS is to bring down the state of Israel. Justice and freedom for Palestinians are incompatible with the existence of the state of Israel. BDS pertains to the entirety of Palestine, not only Gaza and the West Bank. BDS mean the end of a Jewish state, and in a chant by BDS protesters, it was shoot the Jews. So as I've been saying, BDS is an anti-Semitic organization, end of fact, and it has everything to do with Israel. So that's just my ending point. Thank you very much, and I hope you will oppose this motion.
Good evening. I'd just like to make a very quick statement with regards abstaining from this motion, as the issue is Israel is 3,100.
I'm gonna come in there. So you don't, under any circumstances, unmute yourself like that. You wait for the chair to raise a point, and if Lucy wants to talk and give you the right, then Lucy gives the talk and gives you the right. We don't do that here, unfortunately. Sorry, Lucy, you can carry on. And without apologies, I was initially saying to give you a way to say the last speech, but I think you've got the ending speech as it is. So Lucy, you can take over.
Yeah, I think we'll cap that as the kind of ending speech and move on to our next motion, just because we're for time. So moving on to our second motion, 6.2, Warwick University to fully divest from all unethical industries and release all investments. I'm not sure if the proposer or seconder are here. I know that Yaz is
here.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Hi. So right now, I have coronavirus, so I'm not sure how much I can engage in the debate later on. And I'm going to be a bit breathless whilst I'm saying this. 1 minute, sorry. Okay, so the proposer and seconder of this motion are Warwick SU's Environment and Ethics officers elected in the spring elections. One of our manifesto pledges, which we were elected to deliver, was to hold the university accountable on all of its unethical investments. This motion therefore institutionalised our manifesto pledge, mandating the SU and its next batch of officers to continue the work we were elected by you to do. Warwick University is our university. It makes its investments in the name of every student on campus. Let's make sure the university is funding a better future for all of us. This motion will help the SU lobby the university to do just that. It cuts to the heart of Warwick's investments, both direct and indirect, and the relationship those investments have with students and the impact it has on all of our futures. We're asking the university to publicly release a full list of all of its investments so that students can, for the first time, see exactly where our money is going. We're asking the university to adopt responsible investment policies that support a sustainable future, and that means having some of us, the students, on its investment committees, so that we can actually direct money towards initiatives that ensure we all have a future on this planet. We're asking the university to divest from industries that are complicit and/or in direct violation of human rights, so that we as students are not tied through our fees to the funding of organisations and countries that violate human rights.
Thank you, Camilla, and I hope you feel better soon. Does anybody want to speak against this motion? Have we got any hands up? Yaz?
Yeah, we do, but I think some of them were from the previous motion. So I'm going to give everyone an opportunity to put their hands down first, and then I'll go from there. So I can see one from, is it Ali? Ali?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, if you'd like to go.
Yeah, this motion seems like basically an attempt to merge the Barclays motion and the BDS motion into one much nicer sounding motion. So effectively, the motion proposal includes discussion of Barclays and Israel, and it effectively seems like just a way to hide its true ambitions, which is to get the university to invest in things that the proposers think are ethical, whether or not those things are actually ethical, or whether or not the student body agrees that they are ethical. So it just seems like a way to hide the true intentions of the proposers, which is to clearly to get through the BDS motion and the Barclays motion in kind of a less than forthright way.
Okay, Camilla, did you want to come back to that before I ask another question, or? Not, then I'll check.
I think, sorry, 1 minute. I think your thing was saying that like we have like some hidden ambition. Like, no, I guess our ambition is that we just want to get this university to divest from companies that are complicit or in direct violation of human rights. I don't understand how that's so controversial. I think the other two motions do talk about Barclays and obviously BDS, and if it's kind of like if the shoe fits, if they're also companies that are complicit in human rights violations, then obviously as environment and ethics officers, we are mandated to do our job. So, yeah.
Thank you. Yaz, any other hands up?
Yeah, we've got a couple, and I think it's important to know as well, Lucy, you've given me the go-ahead to say this as well. If your name isn't an actual name and it's a joke of a name, you're not going to get picked. So you could keep your hands up as long as you won't get picked. I think there's one from Isaac. Is it Isaac or Isaac?
Yes, it's Isaac. I'd just like to say it's a very good idea. It's very nice, and I'd like it to happen. But I think you would struggle to actually force the university to do it for one key reason, and it's actually nothing to do with Israel. It's something to do with an equally nefarious government, which is absent from the actual things written down by the student union, but has been mentioned by some people in the chat and on here. And that's the Chinese government and the Uyghurs. And there's a very good reason as to why that's not on here. And that's that the university as a whole isn't going to want to do anything about it for a simple reason. Chinese students make up the largest cohort of all foreign students, according to Universities UK. A total of 120,385 students who can be charged almost £30,000 each per year before things like accommodation to be able to study here. And so I think it's very clear that the lack of of sort of scrutiny against Chinese companies and pretty much any country other than Israel and any company other than fossil fuels, and for some reason, I don't know why, but I'm happy to have it explained to me why Barclays Bank. It just seems a little lackluster that such a big, abuser of human rights and such a big imperialist country as China is ignored simply because you know that you're not going to be able to force the university to speak out against them because the university wants to retain money. So if that's the case, why is this motion even useful? If we're cherry picking which unethical investments the university is going to have to release, then surely this motion in and of itself is too flawed to really be worth enacting, I would argue. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other hands up, Yaz?
Yeah, we have someone called Savannah.
Okay, if you'd like to go next.
Hi, I was just wondering, what makes these companies complicit in human rights violations? What human rights have they violated?
Okay, Kimia, I think you're best to respond to that if you're able to.
So if they're complicit in genocide, apartheid, if they're complicit in the climate crisis, and like you can even press on the links in the footnotes and they'll provide you so much more information on that.
Thank you. Will and Yaz, are there any more hands up?
Sorry, I was muted as well. Will, do you want to just take over with hands up as well for the time?
Yep. We have Michael.
Okay.
Hello.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Oh, awesome. Just before I get onto my points, I wanted to quickly say that if we're going to limit the amount of people who can talk per proposition, which I understand for time reasons, I think it's pretty ridiculous to remove the chat feature, considering that's a way that people can continue the debate. I've got two questions for the proponents of the debate. First of all, how would this motion actually benefit the average student? How would this improve our experience? And secondly, the students who you want to sit on the investment councils, that's part of your proposal, would those students be a coalition of students, some of whom have different opinions from the others? Or would it just be the students who agree with the proposition? Thank you.
Just quickly before
I reply. Oh, sorry.
Before you respond to that, the reason that we got rid of the chat was because it was going too quickly for us to monitor, and I want people to have the chance to properly get their questions answered on the meeting itself rather than just in the chat. So that's why. Kimia, if you want to respond, please.
Okay, thank you. There's such a focus on student experience and not enough on how our position in this university. How I personally don't feel comfortable giving 9.2k to this university anyway, but not knowing where that money is going to and seeing that money complicit in genocide and apartheid, I personally don't feel comfortable in that. Not everything has to be about your individualistic student experience. At the end of the day, that the world is bigger than that. We can simultaneously care about student experience and care about other things that are going on in the world. But yeah, sorry. Could someone else speak in support the other PTOs?
Are any of the other PTOs here that want to speak in favour? Just unmute yourself if any of the PTOs are here.
I can speak. I just like to say just echo what Kimmy said about student experience, but also someone again brought up China, and again, well, there are concerns about any intervention in China only being self-serving and not actually being to help oppressed Uyghurs in China for the UK and US's own imperialist ventures, but also going back to the point of not using China as a whataboutism tactic, because that's really not going to work. I don't think a lot of people would have cared about Islamophobia before the news about the Uyghurs became bigger than it was previously. So yeah, that's all I have to say really.
Thank you, Naz. I think we've got
Rachel. Yeah, so it doesn't say my title, but I'm also ethnic minorities officer, and like referring to what the person said about the average student, I do think you need to consider that the average student doesn't necessarily like exist. There are so many different people. The student population is made up of so many different people who might not be average to you. For example, Black, brown, and other students of colour who are greatly impacted by this motion. So I think, yeah, when you talk about average and the language that we use is very important and who we're centering in this discussion, because although certain individuals, when I say certain individuals, I'm particularly talking about white middle class boys or men, when their idea of average is very different to other people's ideas. And I do think we need to be conscious within that, as this motion inevitably affects more people than others, which is why it is so important to so many people. So yeah, I just wanted to include that in, and just like a reminder to be mindful about the language we use and if it is inherently exclusionary. Thank you.
I object to being called a white middle class boy. I'm from a very poor family from Poland and further back from Ukraine. So if we're going to be talking about exclusionary language, I'm very sorry, but what you just said is extremely exclusionary.
All right.
She didn't personally talk to you. She was just speaking generally. But okay.
Yeah, she would have said Michael if that is the case. So no.
I didn't say thank you. So you can go on.
That's all right. Thank you. And just again, please a reminder to not butt in and raise your hand if you have something to say. I'm going to try and make it so that people that haven't had the chance to speak yet get to say something. So did Ko want to go next? I think that was who.
Hi, it's Quay.
Sorry, my bad.
Yeah, no, it's all right. I think this motion is quite important, as Warwick had pledged to promise to divest from fossil fuels in 2015. So if this is something that has come up again, surely, if Warwick can make a promise and a commitment to the student body, surely they should follow through on that. So the conduct in this debate has been disgusting. For you to feel personally by someone speaking about the centering of white voices in this is just self-centered in itself. I don't understand. The average student experience, like Rachel, the PTO said, doesn't exist. Who is average? If you're talking about average, you're talking about the white student who outnumbers the Black and brown and other ethnic minority students by a large. I think we need to be mindful of how we speak, who we speak about, and to understand that these are motions being debated for everyone, and everyone's voice is as important, and not just the white men who love to hear the sound of their voices.
Thank you, Quay. Just again to literally just reinstate what Quay said, the conduct in this meeting, I've not been impressed by it, to be honest, and I think that we need to be more respectful and remember that please don't speak until I or Yaz or Will invite you to do so. I'm going to move to summarising speeches. So did Kimia want to summarise the motion, please, or anybody else?
Yeah, sure. So yeah, like this institution is filled with students. It functions for us and should be catered towards us, our short and long-term interests. And we should be thinking about Palestinian students on campus. We should be thinking about students, about all of us who are all we don't know where our money is going to. We don't know that we're all complicit in a climate crisis that is disproportionately impacting the global south. We should be doing something about this. So on this motion, we'll be voting for our futures, but also our presents. If this motion is passed, then the SU will be able to lobby the university to invest in a better future and a better present for all of us. Thank you.
Thank you, Camilla. Did anybody want to give a summarising speech against this motion or an opposing speech? Just feel free to unmute yourself.
Well, before they do that, I'm just waiting for hands to go down. Whoever wants to do opposing speeches. Can everyone just keep muted for a second while I try and make sure whoever wants to speak in favour or whoever wants to speak against is not outdated? Hands up. So obviously, what Lucy said, we're trying to pick students that haven't gone yet. Shoshana?
Yeah, that's me. I would like to oppose this motion, mostly because of, I think it is point 9 in the motion that states the university should divest from industries that are both compliant and in direct violation of human rights, including those that aid Israeli apartheid. In my view, I think that this motion is another way for the BDS motion to get accepted, and it is a way to really ignore and really disregard all the Jewish students on campus by creating this anti-Semitic environment that is really unhelpful and I think really is hurtful to the Jewish community on campus. And I think that I completely agree with the unethical industries on campus, but I think that this motion is really picking and choosing different movements that can be really harmful to some communities on campus. And I think that there should be a really clear layout as to what we are approving or disapproving, because I think this is another way for the BDS movement to get approved, even though the motion that we spoke about before was not accepted by the majority of speakers in this. So I think that we should oppose this motion. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to an access break now for 10 minutes, just so anybody who wants to stretch their legs, get a glass of water, do whatever they want to do, can do that. If you guys can come back at 6, should we say that's about 10 minutes? And then we'll move on to our next motion. Thank you, guys. Right, hello everyone. Welcome back to part 2 of the ASV. Just a quick reminder again before we get started about conduct, and please only speak when you've put your hand up and I've called on you. We're going to move on to our, which is 6.3, remove Barclays from campus and invest in ethical banking. I'm not sure if the proposer or the seconder is here to speak for this. I think Yaz said that Alexandros might be here. So if he is, then please feel free to unmute. Yaz,
Yeah, so they
actually,
can't. Yeah, so I've stopped them from unmuting themselves. So they're gonna need to put their hand up. I see two, one from James and one from Conrad. Is this in favour of the speech?
I think Alex has just put his hand up, so if
Oh
you
yeah, I
could
can see
unmute.
that. Cool. Yeah, give me a second.
You.
So Alex, I've just sent a request for you to unmute yourself, so you should be able to talk now.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Perfect. Thank you very much. So I proposed the motion regarding removing Barclays from campus. I'm part of the Climate Reality Warwick chapter. And basically, why did I propose this motion? Because as our world is preparing to battle the worst effects of anthropogenic climate change, and there are some actors who are helping for it, there are others who are completely ignoring it and are even propagating the production of carbon emissions for the sake of private profit, knowing that this will lead to a sixth extinction, to an ecosystem collapse, and to massive, massive harm. So one of these firms is basically Barclays Bank, PLC. A report released by the Rainforest Action Network and the Bank Track Group reported that Barclays is the top European banker of fracking and coal and leads as the worst European bank with $85 billion poured into fossil fuels and $24 billion into the expansion. This occurred between 2012 and 2017. And Barclays still does not have enough transparency when it comes to where it is investing, and it has set some vague goals regarding carbon neutrality. The University of Warwick has declared a climate emergency. It declared that on September 20th, 2019. And it specifically quoted, "We have a responsibility as a community and organization to help combat climate change through our individual actions, our research and teaching, and how we run and develop our university." Therefore, we in Climate Reality believe that removing Barclays from campus would be an important step towards sustainability. It would help our community and deliver a robust message to Europe's most polluting bank. There have been more movements trying to close more stores that Barclays has around the UK. These started taking place in 2017. And we have suggested as an example Coventry Building Society, but it remains an example because, as some people pointed out, there will be difficulties. And I know that many students rely on Barclays and that it is a important bank. They can find different departments across the country, and it's therefore easy. So I think it is good that we have suggested an example and not a specific bank that we would like Barclays to be replaced with. I know that we've all heard so much about climate change. It doesn't really touch us anymore, but just thinking that it is an actor that is actively harming our planet, our own future, compromising the needs of future generations, I think that just because of that reason, it would be important for a campus which has declared a climate emergency, which shares important values, that we could remove it from campus without having a negative impact, as it could be replaced from a bank. And as I said, it shouldn't necessarily be Coventry Building Society. This was an example of an ethical bank. It could be another bank, I would say, as long as it's not in the most unsustainable banks as shared in a number of reports. So I urge you all to vote in favor of this motion. And I'm really interested in hearing your points on this motion. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Alex. Did anybody want to speak against this motion? If you did, please, can you just raise your hand?
Thanks, Lucy. I can see a couple. Again, I'm going to go with the preference of someone who hasn't gone yet. So I see someone called John. So I'm going to just request to unmute you, and then you should be able to start speaking after that. John Manson. Sorry, I just muted that. I don't know what was going on. I don't know if you want me to go back to John and go again, Lucy, or if you want me to try someone else.
No, I think let's move on to somebody else.
Okay. Can I go with? I think so the three afters have already gone. So we've got Michael, Ali, and Isaac. So it's up to you who you want to pick.
Did you say Michael first?
Yeah, Michael. Yeah. So Michael, I'm gonna give you an opportunity to. So you should be able to speak after this. So just send a request.
Hello.
Yeah.
All right. So I'm just going to say that if you're going to propose a motion such as this, you really do need to give a specific bank that we can compare to, because otherwise we don't know what services the students on campus will be losing. Obviously, you say that Coventry Building Society is just an example, but I've looked at their website now, and they have no current accounts. So all you'd be doing is depriving many students on this campus of a valuable resource and a point that they can go to sort out their banking. It would specifically be an issue to those who need in-person banking if they rely on checks, cash, and other such things. Thank you.
Thank you. Alex, did you want to come back to that? I think Yaz will have to send you a request to unmute yourself again. So just wait for him to do that.
Yes, thank you. So thank you for your question, and I agree with you. I would have to say that it was really difficult setting up this campaign for us, and we tried to do it, and we just believe that it is important for like someone to just say it out so that people realize about it. There were people within our community who did not know how unsustainable banks are, so this just puts it out, makes everyone realize how banking is basically fueling the climate crisis by a lot. So this was our most important point. Then talking about a specific bank, well, if this motion does pass, which we hope it does, it means that the SU will lobby with the university, and we will still be able to liaise with the SU to talk about it and see which bank we could choose, so that students you lose the least services, and at the same time our campus becomes as sustainable as possible. And you could follow our page too and send us a direct message, and we could talk about this more if you want. Thank you.
Thanks, Alex. Anybody else? Yaz, who was next?
I saw a hand from Akaswa and then one from Ben Lacey.
Okay, Akasha, do you want to go first? I think Yaz will have to send a thing again to unmute you.
Hi, yeah, I just wanted to respond specifically to Michael, I think. In terms of like the specifics of the resolves, obviously they've given an example of a bank, but essentially like it's not the job of the motion proposers to make sure that this goes through and make sure that it goes through in the best way for students possible. It's for the elected officers who are mandated to do it, to like consult with students, especially international students, to make sure that the bank that is there is ethical and works for students. So yeah.
Thank you. Any other hands up?
Yeah, the next one was Ben Lacey. So I'm just going to request to unmute Ben.
So it seems like this motion is purely based on an idea rather than there being any actual substance behind it. For example, we haven't been given any data or anything quantitative as to how Barclays, not specifically this one on campus, but all banks in general, are actually contributing to the climate crisis. And also, you can't just take something away, which then causes a problem to students, because as the SU, you're meant to be representing students, and then you've just proven your first alternative was actually not suitable for the job that you're proposing. And so rather than coming to us with an idea, surely you can come to us with a whole plan. And then the person just before me said, well, it's not your job, but surely it's just irresponsible to then give that to us without there being any solutions.
Yaz, can you unmute Alex, please, so he can respond?
Thank you. And thank you, Ben, for your question. Well, I would say firstly that it is irresponsible that no one else has thought about it yet, and that it is from an idea that a lot of things can start, and just putting it out, like from the moment that we saw as a team that Barclays is an unsustainable bank. We thought, let's put it out. Now there are 100 people listening to me. Even if this motion is unsuccessful, I hope that they will understand the importance of the issue that we're trying to talk about. Second, I specifically mentioned data when I spoke in favor of this motion, and you can also see the citations of this motion. I don't know if people actually have access to them, but I have cited 3 different sources that are specifically talking about how Barclays pollutes our environment. I also cited the Forest Alliance as well as the Bank Track Group when I talked before. I think there was another point that you mentioned. What was it? Oh, yeah, I think I've covered, like, that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Alex. Any more hands up, Yaz?
Yeah, we've got quite a few. Shingai's next.
Okay, Shingai.
So Shingai, I've just sent you a request to unmute yourself, so you should be able to.
Awesome. Thank you so much. First of all, thank you so much, Alex, for this. However, I do believe that there would be issues with implementation and practicality, and also the impact it would have on students, especially international students who do rely on a large proportion on banking services on campus and the ability to receive international transfers, and banks that have not only the experience, but that would allow ease of access from whichever nation that they're coming from. And one of the key things that was highlighted in what you said was that it would be important for awareness to be raised among students. And that's one of the things that you wanted. And you felt that even if this doesn't go through, awareness has been raised to over 100 people. I feel like there are other ways to make awareness to raise awareness concerning the issue, and perhaps contemplating how. Also, it is also to consider that there is an empty space which could take up an ethical banking, an ethical bank, if that's something to be considered. But also you have to just think about the risks and the mitigations. And though I am aware that it is not your job to implement it, I do believe in pushing for something, one has to know what the pros and cons are, and you have to have a reasonable answer to this. So though I do believe that the sentiment behind it is great, I do believe it would do more harm than good to the student population that the bank services exist to serve. So yes, thank you so much.
Shingai, Alex, do you want to come back to that point, or I think you're already
Yes.
unmuted?
Yes, thank you very much, Shingai. Okay, so first of all, I'd like to say that I'm an international student myself, and Barclays is where I first went to open my bank account to. Just because there's the Barclays branch there, it is where everyone goes, where all students go, especially now that there is no Santander. Basically, students are given no other option and just have to open a bank account with the most unsustainable bank in Europe. But when it comes to that, this motion would even cover if another bank branch opens that's like even the second most unsustainable bank. I don't say that that's what I would like to happen, but as long as it is a bank that, as I said before, is as sustainable as possible while meeting the needs of students as much as possible. Also, we specifically included in this motion that we only want Barclays to be removed if at first we are sure of this other bank existing there that can offer the help that students need. So that's why we think that this motion is still very good to be in favor. And thank you so much for your points.
Thank you, Alex. I'm going to allow 2 more speakers before we move on to summarising motions. So, not motion speeches. Yaz, who had their hand up?
Has James? I don't know if James has gone first, so I'm gonna unmute James if that's okay. So James, I've just requested to unmute you, so you should be able to speak after this.
Good afternoon. Alex, I appreciate the fact that you were raising awareness for the fact that Barclays Bank is indeed the 6th biggest funder of fossil fuels among banks globally and is the biggest in Europe. And I mean, let's be completely honest. I hate banks. You hate banks. We all hate banks. If I could get away with sewing my money into my mattress at night, I would. However, the fact is, I cannot, in good conscience, vote for this proposal, as in effect I'm giving the Students' University a blank check. I'm sorry, not the Students' University, forgive me, the Students' Union a blank check to replace the bank branch with whatever they feel like. And I don't believe that I don't believe this proposal is fully fleshed out. You mentioned that you know, we'll replace Barclays Bank once we find a bank that suits all students. However, how will this be done? How will the services provided to students? How will that be gauged? This proposal contains no information with regard to that, and it's an excellent motion. It seeks to accomplish something. It seeks to raise awareness, and you've done that successfully. However, like I said, I am afraid I will have to abstain from this motion, and I do urge others to do the same. Thank you.
Thanks. I'm going to allow 1 more speaker before he does his closing kind of speech. So, Yaz, do we have any new hands up of people who haven't had the chance to speak yet?
I have one from sorry, I'm trying to pick the ones that haven't gone yet. Will, is this a point, Will? Sorry, I've just seen Will's hands go up. I'm just gonna unmute him. Hello, Will. Okay, Will doesn't want to. Maybe just go to Ben Lacey. I've just sent a request to Ben. Ben, I've just sent you a request to unmute yourself. No, Ben?
Let's move on to closing speeches then.
Yep,
If nobody else has.
cool.
Alex, if you want to go.
Yes, so thank you very much for this debate. And James, thank you for your comments and your kind words. Well, I would have to say that I have a little more trust than you do in the SU, and I believe that they would be capable to liaise with sustainability societies that have proposed this motion and are backing this motion, as well as individuals. From my experience from past year and from this year, the Democracy and Development Officer, as well as the Environment and Ethics Officers, have been cooperative and do not. I would not think that they would work in any way that would go against the purpose of this motion, that would be to, first of all, raise awareness when it comes to ethical banking, and second of all, open another ethical bank branch to replace the Barclays branch. So, as I said before, Barclays is a major human rights violator. It is a bank that is fueling the destruction of our planet, and the declaration of a climate emergency and our hope to create a sustainable community in the University of Warwick are incompatible with the existence of this bank on our campus. I believe that it is feasible for this bank to be replaced in a way that will not affect students in a bad way, and that it can be a change that happens so that it carves our way to sustainability. And that's why I think that you should vote in favor. Thank you.
Thank you, Alex. Does anybody want to do a summarising speech against this motion? Just pop your hand up if you do. Yes,
There's a hands up from Isaac, so I'm going to get Isaac to speak. I've just sent a request to unmute yourself, Isaac.
Lovely, thank you. It's a very great idea, and I support it as an idea. But I think that there are a few problems with it. The one raised by Shingai and the fact that there's a space for a different ethical bank where there was a previous Santander space is true. But the other thing is that you would still be able to withdraw and deposit money into a Barclays bank account through the post office and also the Bank of Ireland hole in the wall outside the Roots shop. And so even if you were to actually remove the physical Barclays own brand cash machines, you would still have other methods of students withdrawing money from Barclays. And I think that it disadvantages students too much, and it doesn't allow for the fact that some students don't have much of a choice in who they bank with. In my home county of Suffolk, Barclays is by far the most common bank to have bank branches. It had a bank branch in the town I went to school in, and the nearest bank branch to me as well. I had pretty much no choice to go with Barclays, and a lot of international students are the same. And so I think it would be too harmful, and that there's too little of a solution as to who they would go with, who could rival Barclays in their size and their coverage of students in order to actually make the motion viable, even though it's a very good idea.
Thank you, Isaac. We're going to move on to our final motion, which is Warwick SU supports UCU's call for online teaching, and I believe Megan or Akusia are going to speak in favour of this. So Yaz, can you unmute? I think Megan put her hand up first, so I'm assuming that she's going to be speaking in favour.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. Hi. So yeah, this motion mandates the SU officers to lobby the university for online teaching. In line with the UCU, it would mean that the SU would call for online teaching in all cases where pedagogically possible. This would mean that labs and other practical classes would still go ahead in person, library and other study space would remain open, but seminars and other sessions that can move online should move online. Given the current COVID-19 pandemic, we believe this is the safest way for the university to operate for students, their friends, staff, and the local communities we live in. The coronavirus pandemic has already killed upwards of 60,000 people in the UK. We have just entered a second national lockdown, and yet the University of Warwick is maintaining their commitment to in-person teaching. Universities have already been a key area of transmission over the last few months, with over 40,000 cases as of 6th of November, which is not safe for students, staff, or the people they mix with. Independent Sage have been in favour of online teaching since the 21st of September, but the government have failed to listen. In Sage's most recent report on the 4th of November, they called on universities to move immediately to online teaching and learning, to minimise the number of staff and student journeys to and from campus, and maximise the effectiveness of residential bubbles. Students from marginalised communities are also disproportionately negatively affected by the university decision to maintain in-person teaching. Between 2nd of March and 14th of July, 60% of all deaths in the UK from coronavirus were among disabled people, according to the Office for National Statistics. Death tolls among ethnic minority communities have also been disproportionately higher, partly due to racial bias in healthcare. The SU have already been working to make online teaching of high quality and as accessible as possible, and will continue to do so if the motion passes. Although the highest death tolls from COVID are among the elderly, young people can still be badly affected by long COVID. Furthermore, the Warwick UCU branch have recently passed a motion to ballot to strike over having to teach in person. Therefore, this situation may come down to online teaching or no teaching at all. It also, if we move to online teaching, it also puts us in a much better situation to campaign for reduced tuition fees, as obviously online teaching is not value for money. But yeah, I would ask all people to vote in support of this motion.
Thank you, Megan. Yas, have you got anybody who wants to speak against before I open up the floor to discussion?
Yeah, there's a few. Again, I'm just going to go with the names. The first one that I saw, I think it was John Cambridge who went up first. I'm going to give it to John. So John, I've just requested to unmute yourself, so you should be able to unmute you. If okay, John? Okay. So if there maybe I think Cameron Hall. I sent a request for Cameron. Cameron, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you perfectly. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Brilliant. So I just wanted to say firstly, in response to what Megan said, I think it really does, highlight the divisions, within the student body on this issue. Of course, I think obviously it's important to recognise that there are some people who do want to be taught fully online, and there are some people who do like the current blended learning approach. Of course, there were 439 students who signed our open letter earlier this year. There's a significant amount of international and marginalised students who also signed our open letter. And I think it's important to remember as well that no particular group has a sort of the same consensus or a same set of or think the same on this issue. I think that's important to say. And the university, certainly from, my experience of others that I have spoken to on this, have done their best to mitigate the risk of coronavirus in-person teaching through the use of social distancing, through wearing face masks and the sanitisation of desks as well. And so I think it's important that we realise that students have the ability to be taught with as much over their teaching as they can at the moment. And particularly with the second lockdown, I think it's heightened that. On the first point of mental health, I think it is essential at this point that we ensure that students' mental health and well-being is put first. And the ONS said with the first lockdown that a third, or amongst young adults, depression and anxiety tripled directly because of COVID-19 and because of lockdown. And I think I raised significant concerns that for the online teaching, and for many students who may not have live well in their flat, and particularly for first years as well, that this heightens the risk of mental health becoming an increasing problem amongst young people. And so really to ensure that students have that choice, because students are taught differently, students like to be taught differently. And so to have that choice over their academic progression, to ensure that those don't become significant concerns that cause anxiety and potential mental health issues, I think it's important that we give students that choice over how they are taught, especially given that the university has done all it can to mitigate risk. So I think it's important to vote against this motion to ensure that students have that choice, because by voting for this motion, you are taking that choice away from students, and I fear significant academic and mental health and well-being consequences because of this. Thank you.
Megan, to come back to that.
Yeah, I can do. Sorry, I just hear an echo, sorry. So yeah, Cam mentions that students should have the choice. The problem at the minute is not all students have the choice of whether to be taught on campus or not. Some departments are offering this and some aren't. You talk about the university doing a lot to mitigate the risk of coronavirus, but by saying that, you're accepting that there is a risk, that there is a risk to students, there is a risk to their friends, there is a risk to staff. We've already had one person in the school who has coronavirus at the minute. So the university can do all it wants with social distancing and mask wearing, but those social distances will not always be be used, like not when you're entering a room or leaving a room. There is still the possibility, there is still a risk that people could get really ill from this virus. You mentioned about the mental health of students. The SU is already doing a lot of work for improved mental health provision, specifically Izzy and myself, among other offices, to make sure that wellbeing, for example, checks up on students who have tested positive, checks up on students who are self-isolating, to make sure that they are okay. These issues are not mutually exclusive, and we understand the mental health implications that this current coronavirus pandemic is having on many students. And equally, to your point, like many students might be suffering from mental health issues as a result of feeling like they're forced onto campus or they'll miss their teaching. So it's like you say, the student population is very split. We can vote on this motion. Yeah.
Thank you, Megan. Yaz, who else had their hand up?
Yeah, we have a few. I think we'll go with some of our committee and part-time officer members first, and then we'll go to other students if that's cool with you, Lucy.
Yeah,
so I see Luke from Democracy, so I'm going to unmute yourself, Luke. And before I do that as well, as a quick mention, this is not to you, Luke, but this is just to everyone. If anyone starts playing like inappropriate music or starts saying absolute absurdities on the chat, we will expel you from there as well. So that's just a warning moving forward.
Thanks. Thanks. It's lovely to contribute to this all-student meeting, and I thank you, Yaz, for discussing people talking about absurdities, because, of course, I would never do such a thing. I think it's important that we look where we are now. The university's already put in place its blended learning option, and it's clear this is the option students want, with less interactive lectures recorded and uploaded, and interactive small group teaching held offline with online options where they want. As chairman of the Philosophy SSLC, I attend meetings with philosophy staff, and from what I gather, without wishing to put words in their mouths, they're positive about the structure because it provides the right balance between online and offline learning. I know that the motion provides an exemption for those who want to learn offline, who need to learn offline also, such as those who work in laboratories. But the truth is that other degrees need this offline teaching just as much as lab students. History, philosophy, politics, all require dynamic discussions and debates so that we can deepen our knowledge of the subject. And I'm sure those who take language modules will also deeply dislike the fact that people in the SU seem to want them to pay £9,000 for Duolingo, seeing as we're all pretty sure that tuition fees aren't being lowered anytime soon. And with respect to the SU Democracy staff who are doing their best with this meeting, and Yaz, you're an absolute star, this meeting is proof enough of the fact that online discussions are simply not as good as offline discussions. But let's look at whom this motion will affect the most. It's the poorest students who do not have the adequate computer facilities or internet facilities. It hurts those with accessibility needs, and Warwick Enable has condemned the SU for its position on this already. It's those who are already depressed who will face even less human interaction than they were having before. Those who will benefit will be the middle class and the rich, as well as possibly those who are looking to gain a lucrative position at Unite. And as per usual, the poorest will suffer. So whilst I do enjoy sitting around looking like this and doing some of my online seminars, I urge you to vote against this motion so that I can learn offline once again. Cheers.
Thanks, Luke. Megan, did you want to come back to that bit specifically? I think Yaz might have muted you again. So Yaz, can you just unmute Megan, please?
I think Akos was the second of the motion. I think Akos wanted to go after, so I'm gonna give it. If that's okay, Luz. Give me a second. I'm just gonna request to unmute. So you should have got that now, Akos, so you can go after.
Hi. Yeah, I was just going to respond to some of the stuff that has been said. So, like, as Megan addressed, the idea of mitigation means that we're accepting a risk, and it means that we're satisfied with the idea that some people may die and get sick from the coronavirus, which is not something that I personally would agree with. And I'd also say, in response to you, Luke, the pandemic has disproportionately impacted working class people who've had to go to work when others have had to stay home. Black people, brown people, disabled people. So actually, it doesn't work in the way that, you know, the most privileged are most impacted. It's actually the least privileged who are most impacted, because they are the ones who have to go to work, who have to go out, who have to be in contact with people. I'd say otherwise, like in response to people saying that there possibly could be an opt-in, opt-out system and blended learning, that's easy for students to say, for undergrads to say, because they have the freedom, or they may have the freedom in the future to opt in and opt out. But what you'll find is that many postgrads and teaching staff won't have that option because they will be the ones who will have to come in, who will have to travel in, who will have to be in contact with people who choose to opt in. So I'd say, if nothing else, I'd call on everyone to have compassion for teaching staff who are worried about their health and the health of their loved ones, who've had to go to the extent of considering striking, of withgoing pay to make sure that their lives and the lives of their loved ones are not at risk. I'd say, if you're in opposition, I challenge you to answer this question directly. What is more important than protecting the lives and healths of people at this time?
Thank you. Yaz, who else had their hand up next?
Yeah, so we're still going around with the officers. I think Amara's there as well, so I'm going to make Amara unmute herself and you can go. Send a request over to you, Amara.
Hi, can you hear me? Can you? Okay, fabulous. I think I'm going to join a lot of what Amicus has already said, but I just wanted to note a lot of mention of choice. But I need to remind everyone this is a life and death situation where the choice that people are actually proposing could lead to actual death of human beings. And it's kind of scary that we keep bringing up that notion where human beings could die if we don't move teaching online, because the risk isn't just they wouldn't enjoy their seminars. The risk is they have health implications, which impacts their ability to live. In terms of mental health that people keep on bringing on, I think Megan did mention this, but mental health does come into play in both instances. The first instance is, of course, online learning, but of course, people being forced into seminars where they can't actually, they're not allowed to leave because the department hasn't allowed them to have an online option. And then when it comes to the whole notion of seminars being better than online teaching, they're both terrible. I don't know why anyone would think the current situation of our seminars right now is up to scratch and should be acceptable. We're allowing Warwick University to get away with making us pay £9,250 for home students and a lot more for international students. It is abhorrent. We shouldn't be paying this amount, but we're allowing this, and we're trying to give them the safe option by saying, oh, it's fine because online teaching is better. It isn't. In-person teaching is better, but it isn't. In-person teaching is terrible. People are socially distanced. People can't hear each other. And the mention of disabled students, the students who are hard of hearing and deaf cannot hear the seminar because they don't have captions and they don't have transcripts also. And so people were mentioning disabled, not realizing there was implications for them. And the best option is to go to online, the online option, just so then we can ensure that online option is up to scratch and we can actually challenge the university in their stance against the fees that were being made to pay. So, and also I think we also need to remember, UCU have voted that they will go and strike if we do not move online. So the two options are go online or have no learning whatsoever. And it's quite scary that people aren't hearing the words of their lecturers. You are saying you want your learning, but you now will not have that option because your staff will go and strike because they are terrified for their health and for their safety. So, yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Amara. Has any more hands up?
Yeah, we've got quite a few. Do you want to keep it with some of the officers for now, or do you want to go to some of the students now? It's up to you.
If we do one more officer, then move on to students.
Yeah, cool. In which case, I see Rachel. I'm just going to request to unmute you, Rachel.
Yeah, I just like to say, in terms of like support for this motion, I think a lot of there are like a lot of underlying health issues that a lot of Black and brown students have because of like various like socioeconomic situations as well. So when I think of like underlying health issues such as asthma, where students are prior to going to go onto campus, knowing that they are in a compromised position themselves, and there is also a mental health crisis there, or there is also that someone's mental health is being compromised there. So I do think when we're being aware, or when we're thinking about this motion, we need to also think about, again, who is most affected by this. Black and brown people have been dying at a disproportionate rate, and we don't want to see that replicated on campus. So yeah, I would kind of urge people to look not only beyond this motion at face value, but also individual students who may be in compromised positions because of socioeconomic factors.
Thanks, Rachel. Yaz, if we open it up to the students now, who's got a hand up?
Oh, I see one from Jonathan Downing. I hope I'm saying that right. So I'm just going to request to unmute you first, and then you should be able to talk.
That's brilliant. Thank you very much. Megan, thanks very much for this motion. I think online learning is something that really a lot of us have been considering for a while. I just have a really few questions about the notes that you put up to begin with. Point number 4, the one that begins Warwick's UCU's 5 red lines have not been met by the university. Just a couple of questions. So the red number is the R number, sorry, is rising. That fascinates me. So the R number was actually declining nationally right before we went into lockdown, right? So I wonder if you mean the R number on campus, and if so, I'd love to see the research that was undertaken to show the numbers on campus. And then also you say that classrooms aren't COVID secure. I really want to know in what sense you mean this, because the desks are a metre apart, right, inside, and the chairs are actually further than a metre apart. And we must all wear face coverings inside, and that's enforced by my seminar tutors, which makes sense because it's in their interests to enforce it, right? So we are following what the World Health Organization tells us are the necessary measures. So I'm just wondering why you think that we need to do more than that. And I'll come on later, please don't misunderstand me. I'll come on later to what I think are the causes and what I think we should be addressing. But then you also go on to say that 4 societies from over 250 have released a statement in support of online teaching. Brilliant. That's just less than 2% of societies at Warwick. Thanks for throwing that in there. You then say that students were sold a lie as to what this year would look like in order for the university to collect tuition and administration fees. Right, yeah, okay, so firstly you assume motive, fine, but I can't address that because obviously maybe that is their motive. But if this motion passes, it certainly would have been a lie because I was promised a blend of in-person and online learning, and you're about to deprive that of me. So then you also say that we should support the strike. And so here's what I think. I believe that the SU should instead set about working with the uni for a solution to the problem. I agree that the measures on campus aren't being followed, and this is a problem, but the majority, in my opinion, and I don't have the stats for this, but the majority by students in halls failing to stick to their household groups and in disproportionate government guidelines when it comes to restaurants. And so the problem isn't in the classrooms because our classrooms are COVID secure. And so if we conclude that they're coming through the halls of residence, surely let's figure out a solution to this. What we need is for the university to boost security numbers so that gatherings that are going on in halls can be shut down quickly. That's the real source of cases on campus. That will then also benefit the teaching staff because they'll be exposed to less. But let's not get rid of in-person teaching when actually that's not the issue at hand. It wouldn't solve the numbers because people would still be in halls because, as you suggest, labs and computer things would also still be in person. So people would still be in halls. And so please...
Keep it to as quickly as you can. Please.
Yeah,
So
absolutely. I'm just wrapping up now. Sorry about that, Lucy. Let's draft a motion that actually deals with the issue here, and I will back that all the way. Megan and Cam, you both believe that we should give students across all degrees the choice. So let's make that happen. Please join me in preserving the most efficient form of learning and teaching, which is in person.
Thank you, Jonathan. Just before I give Megan the opportunity to answer that straight away, because there was quite a lot of content in that, and I feel like it would be better for time reasons to answer it all in kind of one go at the end. or not at the end, after a couple more speakers. So yeah, is any more hands up?
Yep. The one that I can see, Majak. So I'm just gonna unmute you.
Yeah. So I think that can everyone hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So I think that some of the people who have for some reason decided to attend this debate really lack a sense of perspective, and I think they should kind of reevaluate what they're trying to do here. So one of the things is that, yeah, so what about teaching staff? What about them? Are people considering them and the risk that they're being exposed to? And I mean, the point about there being, for example, inappropriate social mixing and accommodation is completely irrelevant, because when we're also looking at this from the perspective of teaching staff, some of whom are postgraduates, some of whom are students, oh, look, it's the student experience everyone keeps talking about. They matter too. So I think that yeah, we should absolutely support this motion. We should actually realize that, this isn't a motion about whether or not there should be blue cups or yellow cups inside the cafeteria, or whether or not the school dance should be an underwater theme or a moonlight theme. It's about life and death and the fact that it essentially stands inside our hands. What people don't realize is that this student experience they keep on talking about, and the money that they're paying, the fees that they're paying, the lies that they claim to have been sold or whatever, they actually feed into people being asked to die for essentially no good reason. I mean, already as students, we are inside generally, not all, because some people actually still have to work in this condition, in a relatively privileged position in that we can actually isolate ourselves to a much higher degree than the so-called average working or marginalized people. So I think that we should actually step back a bit from our entitlement, right, and actually realize that no, it is not worth people dying just so that you can, I don't know, whatever it is, look at your crush through the side of your mask inside your seminar. Like, people should actually grow up, and if they can't think of good things to say, then maybe they shouldn't say anything at all, and they should have stopped attending debates like this. That's very anti-democratic, but at this point, if people are behaving this stupidly, maybe democracy isn't as great as we thought it was.
Okay, I'm going to allow one more speaker and then give Megan the opportunity to come back to some of the points that have been raised. Yaz, who was up next?
Sebastian, I think I hope I've said that right as well, Sebastian. So I'm going to unmute you, Sebastian, and then you can go. Hello, Sebastian. Hello. Hello. Okay, in that case, Sigmund? So I'm going to give it to Sigmund instead. So I'll send a request over for Sigmund to speak.
Hi. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry, this isn't actually anything to do with a question. It's more an administrative question. How do I vote? How do I vote? Hello?
So the voting doesn't actually happen at this meeting. Voting opens tomorrow at 10 or 9, I think, and is open through to Friday. So this meeting is literally just to discuss motions.
Okay,
no
cheers,
actual
that's great. Never mind then.
That's right. No problem.
Thanks.
I'll give Megan the opportunity to come back to some of Jonathan's points before we move on to the last couple of speakers. So Yaz, could you unmute Megan or Akusia, whoever wants to respond?
I can go. I think Kimia wants to speak as well, but I'll just jump in quickly first to answer some of the points that have been raised. There was a point raised earlier about disabled students from lower income backgrounds struggling with online teaching. I am a disabled student. I am a widening participation student. And because of that, I have been doing a lot of work with the university on improving their transcripts offering, improving the caption offering and trying to get the IT support fund back open, because it was only open for the first 3 weeks, and I think that is stupid. So I don't think these things are mutually exclusive. To answer some of Jonathan's point, I think I actually wrote this motion about 3 weeks ago because of the deadlines for submission, so maybe the R number is not rising now, but it definitely was at the point this motion was written. And the point still stands that I don't think in-person teaching should be continuing during a national lockdown. You talk about COVID security and about the university following government guidelines, but I think we just have to accept that the government has been incompetent in handling this pandemic. In the world, we have one of the highest death tolls per capita. So I don't think the government guidelines are safe enough for our campus, our local community, our students, our staff, our postgraduate members. You asked why I only referenced those 4 societies. Those 4 societies all represent liberation communities on our campus who are disproportionately affected by COVID. So Pride, Anti-Racism, Anti-Sexism and Ghana Society. You also mention students having house parties and that there should be more security on campus. I think we have to realise that campus security over the years have disproportionately targeted Black and brown students on our campus. This goes back as far as like 2017 when Larissa Kennedy, the education officer at the time, wrote the Speak Out report that shows how much Black and brown students are disproportionately targeted by campus security. So I don't think hiring more campus security is a solution for those students. And finally, you say that I support a choice. I don't actually support a choice, because the problem with choice is that if half the flat is choosing to go to seminars, half the flat is choosing not to, maybe because of health conditions that they have, there's still the possibility that their flatmates are going to be bringing COVID back and spreading COVID around the local community. So yeah, if this motion doesn't pass, I will still be advocating for a choice because it's the best option if this motion doesn't pass. But this motion, I believe, is the best option. That was kind of more of a summation speech. Sorry, Lucy.
That's all right. I'm going to again in a minute. I think with the last 2 speakers before summarise the speeches, I think, Megan, you said Kimia wanted to speak, so I'll let her as an officer speak. Yaz, can you unmute Kimia, please?
I am so sorry. I accidentally unmuted her and then muted her again. So sorry, Kimia. Can you
Can
go
you
now?
hear me?
Sorry.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So yeah, I caught coronavirus from campus, from the place that a lot of you have said is, I forgot who said it exactly. It was like, oh, blended teaching is definitely safe. Well, I caught COVID from blended teaching. I, in this past week, had only attended university, the library, and my seminars, and still got coronavirus. So obviously something is not working if numbers are going up, if people like me have had to stress for this whole week about whether my fever is going to worsen, whether I'm going to be hospitalized. And I honestly, it is triggering for me to even sit here and tell you all of this, but I don't even know anymore, because it's really come to the point where people are saying, where people who, not gonna lie, have never really ever fought for mental health provisions in the past are now talking about mental health when they don't care about the mental health of people who are self-isolating because of COVID. They don't care about the mental health of staff who are forced to come in. They don't care about the mental health of Black people who are, and Black and disabled people who are forced to come onto this campus, staff and students. So honestly, tell me, who do you actually care about? Who do you care about on this campus? Because clearly it's only the white middle class people that are even being centered in this all students vote.
Thank you, Kimia. I think we've got time for one more speaker before we move on to summarising speeches. So Yaz, who had their hand up.
So I think the last one I saw was in the most recent last one was Neil Maru. So I'm so sorry if I butchered your name as well. I'm going to request to unmute you, and then you should be able to talk.
Hi, can you all hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, so that was a very good speech by Kimia. I'm going to be speaking against that. Now, what I think is there are many layers to the debates of people are affected. Now, firstly, the motion itself uses data from September 12th, the peak of the local outbreak here. Using the numbers themselves, you can see that as of today, the data published shows that the cases are not at 187 on campus now, it's 2. I mean, you could say that cases aren't being reported, so it must be higher. But this argument could also hold true even for the September 12th numbers, meaning the peak is almost certainly shown to be lower now. But I think the most important argument here is this. On the 4th of November, right before national lockdown, a large number of students had been asked to stay on campus but still went home and forego any in-person teaching due to their campus life being affected. This creates a larger risk than on-campus COVID actually presented. Now, also in the motion, one of the points was that Warwick is a consequential transmission risk for the West Midlands. I'd like to counter that. Warwick is a transmission risk for the world. My parents have actually asked me to consider returning to India if classes go online. Now, if there are COVID cases on campus, they could go worldwide. This is an alternative risk to that of a campus outbreak. Seeing what happened after the national lockdown, it's not as one-sided a debate as some may make out. When one thinks about going online, it seems like the best course. Everybody stays at the uni, coronavirus doesn't spread, and everybody's happy. This doesn't happen. Keeping some teaching open could actually help reduce the spread of the coronavirus from the university into people's homes. I haven't covered issues of mental health because, to be honest, I've never fought for mental health in the past, and I'm guilty of that. But even if I'm guilty of not fighting for mental health in the past, I do realize that there are arguments on both sides when it comes to mental health. I believe from the point of view of the spread of the coronavirus, it's not a one-sided debate, and actually keeping teaching open could actually in some ways stop the spread from the campus, as well as even reflecting the numbers that we have here. Keeping in-person teaching is where the balance of utility lies, and I really urge the student body to see this and vote on it. Thank you.
Thank you, Neil. I'm going to move on to summarising speeches for this motion. So Megan or Akosua, whoever wants to do the speech in favour, I think. Yaz, can you just...
Yaz isn't unmuted me. So I'm basically going to say similar stuff to before, but also try and answer some of Neil's points as well. So obviously numbers on campus have gone down since this motion was written. Again, this motion has out-of-date data because of the deadline for when I had to put it in. I would have used more up-to-date data if I could have done. What we're concerned about is that people are not reporting cases on campus because they don't want to be the one who has to make their entire flat self-isolate. And I do encourage all people to report to the uni if they get symptoms and get tested. But unfortunately, that does not seem to be the case at the minute. You say about people going to and from university and their family homes. We're coming up to the Christmas holidays now, and I think that the university needs to move online to allow students to move on to return home more freely. And you also failed to notice that there are many commuter students at Warwick, students who travel into university while living in a family home with family members who may be high risk, and this applies to staff too. And staff are not being given the choice to not teach in person because their partner or other family member is a high risk person. You also say that remaining to teach in person will reduce COVID numbers. I don't see how that's possible given that increased social interaction, no matter where this is, increases COVID numbers. That has been seen throughout the last few months since February, March time. Just to go back over a few things, we are doing as much as we can to help disabled students access online learning. We are doing as much as we can for widening participation of students to access online learning. These are not mutually exclusive with these motions. And campus is not a COVID secure place. The government guidelines are not good enough. We have already seen over 60,000 deaths, as I said before. Students from liberation communities are disproportionately affected by this. So when we're thinking about the student experience, we need to think about their student experience. As I said in my first speech, there's been over 40,000 cases university campuses. This is not advocating for labs to stop. This is not advocating for the library to close. There will still be access to teaching for those who need it, but those sessions that can move online should move online for the safety of students, their friends, staff, our postgraduate members, and the local communities we live in Leamington and Coventry. So please vote in favour of this motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Megan. Does someone want to do a summarising speech against this? Yes, has anyone got a hand up or not?
I'll go. So there's a lot of people that have their hands up. I think I'll go with Cameron Hall, just to make, because I know that they spoke against the motion already. Because I know that you wanted to speak and I wanted to give you time, but because of time constraints, we're not able to do that. I'm really sorry about that. I hope you're cool with it. So I'm going to give it to Cameron. Cameron, I think you should be able to talk now.
Yes, thank you very much. I think it's important to reflect that this is a very difficult, very nuanced debate. And I think on the point of online teaching, I think it was Jonathan's comment, I think that really kind of the one that hit with me with regards to where coronavirus itself can be transmitted. And the university have done all they can to mitigate the risk of coronavirus in the classrooms as much as possible. And through the use of social distancing, face masks, and sanitization. It's not 100%, I will admit, but they have mitigated the risk as much as possible. And it's important to reflect as well that, as Jonathan pointed out, classrooms with that mitigation are perhaps the least of the problem. You still have to buy your food every week. You have to go to a supermarket. You have to touch products that other people have been touching. You have to go out, and it will be in close contact in spaces in there as well. People live within houses as well. People within their own households will mix as well. So I think it's important to reflect that with online teaching, it's important that we realise the choice that students have. And those students who want to be fully online, whether that's because they have any underlying health conditions or because that's how they feel safer, I think we need to spend much greater time focusing on how we can support those students, whilst giving those who are comfortable to go to COVID secure face-to-face teaching through a blended learning approach, especially as with already the points we've raised with mental health, that for many students right now, I can attest to this from my experience in the first lockdown, that my mental health did decline as a result of the lockdown measures, as a result of the fact it was very difficult. And for me, going back to university and having that blended learning has something that has made me feel better. And so I think it's important that we allow students to have that choice, to ensure that whether students want to be fully online or whether they want to have that blended learning approach, we do what's best for their academic progression, we do what's best for their mental health, and we do what's best for the health of the community as well, by ensuring that we are mitigating risk as much as possible. So I really urge everyone, and I do hope that you vote against this motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Cameron. I'm going to move on. I've forgotten we've got one last. I mean, it's not really a motion. It's literally just SU affiliation. So there's not really any need to debate this. I'm just going to allow Akusia to do a quick kind of little spiel about what affiliations are essentially, and then we can go.
Yeah, so this is a motion that comes about every year, and it's just about renewing the SU's affiliations with organizations that they work closely with or which they benefit from, for example, for the Advice Centre. So like NUS, Bucks and other organizations. So yeah, if you have any questions, just email the democracy team.
Thanks, Acacia. That is everything, I think, for the meeting today. Thank you guys for coming. Some of the discussion was very insightful. So just to let you know, the date of ASV voting is on the screen, is from 9 AM tomorrow morning until midday on Friday. So the link should be on the SU website. Also, if you want to watch a recording of this meeting after we're done to inform your voting decisions, then that should be up on the website at some point tomorrow as well. Thank you guys very much for coming, and I will see you at the next ASV.
Thank you, my darlings. Goodbye.
Thanks, Lucy.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.